The idea of COVID-HEME came out of discussions that we had at the beginning of the pandemic, when it basically was starting to reach the U.S. cities, and realizing that the information that we were getting from publications and from preprints was always, even though it was diffused quite quickly, was always a little bit behind the anecdotal experience of physicians, and especially physicians across the globe who have had an unfortunately very early and rich experience with COVID patients. And there were a lot of questions that we really wanted to know, in particular about how the epidemic would affect outpatient populations, so patients with hematologic malignancies, and whether they would be at higher risk, under what circumstances, whether the disease would present differently, whether the management would be different. And we thought that it would be useful for physicians across the world to have a forum where questions can be asked and answered directly without the added time requirements of collecting data and sorting it out for publication and getting it peer reviewed, but just anecdotal experience about how physicians were dealing with their patients and what they were seeing that could benefit everybody almost in real time. So that was the impetus behind COVID-HEME.
As Philippe mentioned, this is a forum. This is not meant to give recommendations or official guidelines, although some of the advices are supported by literature, but this is also giving the opportunity for physicians to share their own personal experiences. And so this forum is meant for physicians. It's restricted to physicians only, but then you have to decide, if you consider this as good quality or not. But it's not peer reviewed, as Philippe mentioned. It's just providing additional information to what we can learn from publications.
There are a lot of people who have signed up. I think the last time I looked, there were hundreds of physicians who had signed up to the site, and we've been fortunate in many respects. One is that early on we had the help of a software engineer, Eric Ventilla, who basically helped to customize the platform for our needs and did I think a really nice job. And the help of the platform itself, so Discourse, which was kind enough to host the site for free. And then we've also had the benefit of participation from many hematology societies from a lot of countries like France, Italy, UK, Sweden, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand. So a lot of places that have basically kindly advertised the site to their members in an effort to get really globe-wide participation. And then I think the next question is whether there will be enough interest for people to really share a lot of their information and questions and answers, and that remains to be seen, but we hope that's where it goes next.
Okay, so this is what the COVID-HEME website looks like. Just like any other forum, you can so ask and answer questions. So first of all, you can just go through all the topics and posts that have been discussed, so you can just click on whatever is of interest for you, and just go through the discussions, from top to bottom if you want, and see what people have been discussing and talking about, and who's been discussing. So you can click on the person's profile and know who is. What is his institution, his specialty, his country, and so this is the first way you can use the forum, is just to go through the discussions and learn about what people have been doing. And the other way is if you have a specific question. So either you find it through scrolling through the different topics, or you can just enter the keyword in the search bar to look for what is of interest. So let's say you want to know more about ibrutinib during the COVID pandemic, you just pick ibrutinib and enter, and then you'll find all the topics that have been discussing about ibrutinib, and you just pick one and just read about it and see what people have said about it. And if you don't find the answer to your question here, you can always ask for your own question by clicking on new topic, either here or here. And then you just enter a title for your post and then ask a question and publish it. And then people from the community hopefully will answer your question or share their experience. It's not only about asking questions and answering questions, it could also be about sharing an original or interesting experience that may be useful for the community. So you just can create posts about such experiences. One other thing I want to mention, so this is the main forum. We also have a category that's called resources, where we're sharing resources that can be useful for hematologists in the COVID-19 pandemic. So we've listed here a number of resources that can be useful, and anybody is free to add any additional resources that he feels like would be useful for the community. So it's also a nice way of sharing the information. And finally, I just want to mention this ping bar here where you can invite other physicians. So this website, this forum is really restricted to physicians, and we want to give anyone the possibility to invite other physicians. So you just have to click on this link, and then you can send invites to any physicians, not only hematologists, but infectious disease doctors maybe will be important as well, intensive care physicians and others.
I was just going to add something to what Roch was saying about the restriction of the site to physicians. It's not meant to be a restrictive choice, but it is really meant to keep the site from becoming uncontrolled and uncontrollable, and making sure that the physicians who post are not worried about patients or media being on the site and using the information in other ways. So that was the impetus behind restricting it to physicians, but it's not meant as a snobbish restriction. The primary answer is no, and again, we want to make sure that everyone feels free to post information without fearing they're being scooped or anything like that. At the same time, it's great if it can give people ideas of things to try or things to look for that could eventually become research or publication. So we would be very happy if it nucleated ideas for publications, but the site is not intended for that. It's really intended for free exchange of observations, questions, ideas.
And one more thing is, I don't think this is meant to replace evidence-based medicine, but I think it's very complementary of that. And with this kind of forum, we'd be actually, sharing and capturing different information than the ones we're actually learning from the literature. So I think it could be a different way of learning and working together with other physicians.
I think that it's going to change clinical medicine in rather profound ways because just like it's changing the rest of the world, it is forcing us to do things differently. The clinic is completely different for us than what it used to be in terms of patient volume, patient flow, telemedicine use, and even the requirement to look again at our therapies and prioritize them and say, well, what do we really need to do? And what impact does what we do now have on patients' future? For example, one of the questions that came up from Roch and others is, we use a lot of rituximab or other anti-CD20 antibodies, and we use a lot of it, even in circumstances where there is no overall survival benefit. And yet we know that using those drugs may impair the ability of patients to mount immune responses, and in particular to mount vaccination responses. In this world, this may become most relevant and much more relevant than we've given it credit to now. So it is thrusting questions like this in a much brighter light than we are used to thinking about them. And I think that will change how we practice. And on top of that, beyond oncology practice, the scientific advances, the rapidity of development of testing, of vaccination strategies is phenomenal for this. It is the pace of scientific advances is just astounding, and that will stay with us. And I hope make us better prepared for the next time this kind of thing happens, which unfortunately seems inevitable.
Yeah, maybe I will add one more thing, as we're all now getting to doing more and more telemedicine. We realize that telemedicine has its own limitations for sure, but in certain circumstances for certain patients, it could really be very useful. And so I think we're learning how to use these kind of tools, and this is something we may also keep in the future for certain situations.